Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, What If Fate Stay Night crossover to High School DxD Part 11, and I will continue the other What If as well, and please do subscribe and like for more. The author of this crossover is Ray O'Neil. Chapter 11, Untold Stories 2. I guess that every problem has a point where it all started. In my case it was when I was still just a little girl. I was born and raised in the Meguri clan, one of the very few families in Japan that specializes in exorcising and destroying evil spirits. Those born within my family are taught the arts of purification, exorcism, and destruction of evil spirits from a very young age. I was the only child of the main branch family and pretty much the next one in line to inherit everything. As you can imagine, my family had a lot of expectations for me. Expectation that I didn't live up to. Children may remember from their childhood how they played with their friends or how they spent their time laughing with their parents. The only things I remember are the many times I tried to live up to my family's expectations and failed. Day in and day out, I would try and learn our arts from the old scrolls we owned. I asked the elders for tips. I trained my body, hoping that my control over spiritual skills would somehow develop. It wasn't that I didn't try hard enough, I just wasn't suited for the techniques taught by my family. A matter of incompatibility, one may say. The only thing that I had any talent in was kendo. I wasn't by any means a genius or a natural talent, but it was the one thing that I could do better than most people in the family, and it was something that I actually enjoyed. Overall, my childhood was difficult. I was looked down upon by most of our family's members. A defect by their words. But even so, I tried my best and never give up. As I was growing up, I kept on training, hoping that one day, perhaps by some miracle, I might become able to use my family's arts and earn their approval. Holding on to that hope, I dedicated myself to my swordsmanship, trying to polish it to new heights. If it was my only forte, I might as well make the best I could of it. Everything changed 2 years ago. I wanted to prove that the time I spent training with my sword wasn't just to have a hobby or some excuse to slack on my other lessons, so I entered the national kendo that took place that year. I was feeling pretty confident in my skills and didn't doubt that I will win. The competition was in the form of a tournament and its overall duration was about 2 weeks. When it began, I sent invitation to my family to come and look at my matches. It was after I won the first round that I eagerly looked in the crowd to see where my family was. Only after looking around for 5 minutes that I realized no one came. Though I couldn't help but notice a girl with glasses that kept staring at me rather. Something felt off, but I decided to ignore it. I tried to be positive and hope that they will come for the next rounds. The next 3 rounds had gone easy, and yet there was still no one who came to see me. Somehow this affected my concentration during the final round of the tournament. My opponent wasn't too strong, but at the same time he wasn't by any means someone who would make me struggle the way I did. In the end it came down to a point decision. I did win, but it was a rather close call. After I was awarded the first place prize, I took a glance at the crowd, hoping that perhaps someone from my family came to see me. I felt like my heart exploded in joy when I saw a familiar face in the crowd, far more joy than the one I had from winning the tournament itself. I rushed over to see the person who's sitting close to the exit. It was my father. While I thought I knew the man pretty well, I didn't know what to expect from him next. A congratulation? A thumbs up? A hug? A pat on the head? A proud smile? How pointless those words he told me with that disappointed face made me feel like something broke inside of my body. I came all the way here, expecting a flawless victory, and here you struggled against a third-rate opponent, was all he said as he turned around and walked away. Everything felt hazy at that moment, my stomach feeling like it was boiling and was ready to throw up its contents at any second. I simply walked to my changing room and took a look in the mirror when I arrived. When I saw my reflection in the mirror, everything went red. I threw my trophy in it, shards flying everywhere. I didn't stop there. I started smashing and breaking everything that I could get my hands on, stopping only when I ran out of things to destroy. My went numb knees and I fell on them, streams of tears pouring on my face. Was what I asked for really too much? To be appreciated for my talents? A little acknowledgement? That what I did wasn't pointless? That I wasn't a failure? I just stared at the room, no particular target, simply staring at the air, not noticing that someone was at the entrance. I take it I dropped at a bad time, she commented stoically as she looked around the room. What do you want? Was all I managed to half whisper at her, my voice tired from all the screaming I did when I trashed the room. Truthfully, I came here to make you an offer. She walked carefully towards me, avoiding the pieces of broken glass that were all over the floor. However, I will refrain from doing it at the moment. Although I felt like a broken doll and didn't want to see, let alone talk to anybody, I still managed to ask her. Why? She began searching for something in her bag when I asked. You are clearly shaken and not in the best condition to make life-changing decisions. She pulled out a weird piece of paper. It was the first time when I saw one in person, but I recognized what it was. It was among my lessons about other supernatural beings. A summoning pamphlet. I asked, a bit surprised, but my face probably said otherwise. I understood what the girl with the glasses in front of me was. Yuri, a devil, so you know what I am. This certainly makes things easier. She wasn't surprised or worried of the fact that I knew what she was. She simply put the piece of paper in front of me and proceeded to walk away, turning her head around and giving one last look before she did. You can try summoning me when you are feeling better. Or not, the choice is yours. And she walked away. A week passed since then, or maybe it was 2, I honestly didn't count. Every night I stared at the pamphlet, wondering what I should do. Should I summon her? Should I ignore her? Eventually I calmed down, and decided to go with it. It went well, so to say. I managed to summon her and listen to her offer. The reason why she was in the crowd of the tournament in the first place was because she was scouting for potential members to join her peerage. She wanted me to become her knight. I was certain that she figured out who I was, so I told her if she was expecting any of the techniques taught by my family she could forget it, as I was unable to use them. Actually, she stopped me from my ranting and told me that she wasn't aware of who I was when she handed me the pamphlet. So I asked her why is it that she wanted me join her. She basically explained to me a lot of stuff about potential, possibilities, and a lot of serious stuff, a lot of which I didn't really give that much attention at the time, but it was her next answer that I would never forget as long as I live. Also, because I find your swordsmanship beautiful. Those were her words. A very simple phrase, yet those words affected me beyond my control. Words so powerful that I didn't notice that my face was in tears. It's far from flawless, but I see a lot of potential in it. I could help you reach heights you never imagined. That is, of course, if you truly want it. Perhaps she was saying those words out of respect. Perhaps she was saying them to lure and convince me to join her, and yet I didn't care. I felt happy. It was after my tears finally stopped that I accepted her offer. Meguri shook her head to the side, pulling back a strand of her hair backwards, a trace of melancholy present in her eyes. Obviously my parents and the other members of the clan didn't take it well, so I had to cut all ties with them and leave. So that was her reason, earning the approval of her family. Yet, no matter what she did, she never earned that approval. All the blood, sweat, and pain she endured for their sake was never repaid, and it led to her walking on the path of a devil. She finally found someone who valued the one thing she wanted her family to praise her for. She was offered the closure that all those years she sacrificed in her pursuit of mastering the sword weren't just a waste of time. While it may sound absurd to others, I can understand at some level the feeling of wanting to belong with your family. There were more times than I can remember that I felt out of place when it comes to my family. Maybe it because I was adopted, maybe it was because I am different from them on both a physical appearance and a different way of thinking, but they never treated anything like how Meguri's family treated her. I grew up surrounded by a kind and affectionate family. The life that they offered me, I'm not sure if I can ever repay them, but one thing's for sure, I will protect them, even if it kills me. I took a deep breath and looked at Meguri. Do you regret it? I slowly asked, my chin resting in the palm of my hand. Choosing becoming a devil over your family? No. She certainly surprised me with how she answered without a moment to spare, no trace of doubt present in her voice at all. I still care about them even if we had a rough relationship, but until I joined Kaiko I wasn't really living for my sake. Everything I did was for theirs. The life of a devil isn't all pleasure and freedom, it can be very painful sometimes, but I'm happy the way things are now. She leaned against her chair, her eyes softening as she stared at her palms. I may have lost a family in the process, but in return I got friends that appreciate me, and I learned how to be happy if everyone was a little on the edge when talking about your past discussion first began. They were now relaxed and brightened at Meguri's words. Perhaps I'm looking too deep into it, but maybe she acts all excited and childish because she is trying to make up for the time lost as a child. Who knows? Alrighty, enough about me, The team's knight clapped her hands together and beamed at everyone with a smile. Who's next? The weight of the air seemed to increase once more, but it was much lighter than last time. No one seemed to step up. The silence was so great I could hear from my seat the sound of the water slowly dripping from the tap of the sink. The one to break the status quo was Kusaka with a tired sigh. Might as well do it in a clockwise order. Everyone took a moment to think about her idea, each of them eventually nodding in agreement. Kusaka tapped her fingers lightly on the table, an awkward smile present on her face. Well, my reason was a bit more selfish than yours, Tomo. How so? Hanakai asked her fellow bishop. She fidgeted for a few moments, eyes nervously looking left and right. A dry chuckle escaped her lips as she awkwardly played with one of her braids. I did it for money. My jaw felt like it unhinged for a moment, dropping slightly as I stared at the braid-sporting bishop. It also seemed that I wasn't the only one with this kind of reaction, the others looking similar to me in terms of shock. Saji for one had the most awkward stare. Money really? She nodded shyly, her cheeks reddening. Yep. For money, although I shouldn't judge people. The edge of my mouth twitched rather strongly. Would you be so kind and detail what you mean by that? Sure. I guess it happened a few years back. One could say that the source of my problems was my family as well. I don't really have any memories of my father. In fact, the only reason why I know how he even looks like is because of the photos my mother has of him, but that's all. I don't know what kind of person he was. But if I were to take my mother's words, he was a kind man. He may have been, but I couldn't know. After all, he died in a car crash when I was far too little to understand what was going on. That was when the trouble began. My mother tried her best to make a living so we both could have a proper life. She tried her best to do so, but it wasn't easy. She married right after finishing high school, and never went to college, so her job options were rather limited. But even so, she tried her best so I wouldn't miss out on anything. As I was growing up, my mother would come back home from her shift and check on me if I was sleeping, and during the times when I wasn't, she would stay with me until I did, even though she herself was exhausted. There were so many times I would see her return home so tired and ask her if she was okay. She always had the same answer. I am fine, sweetie. She would always say those 3 words with the same warm yet tired smile, and I would always believe her. I was dead wrong. I was just a child. I didn't understand just where she was heading with the way she handled things. But it all came to light 2 years ago. I was just sitting in class, listening to the boring lesson until I was called in the teacher's room. They received a call from the local hospital. My mother collapsed at work. She had a heart attack. In that moment I felt like something broke in me as it all became clear to me. I rushed to the hospital without any moment to waste, ignoring any calls from my teachers, bumping into people on the street, not once stopping to look or apologize. No thoughts present in my mind with the exception of getting to the hospital. When I got there and saw my mother in her hospital room, I felt like someone began squeezing my heart violently. There she was, my mother, who was always smiling no matter how difficult or grim things seemed, the always bright person in my life. She sat in that bed connected to so many medical devices I didn't know what they were, her eyes closed and her usual kind smile all gone. As I stared at her with tears forming in my eyes, a doctor called out to me and explained to me what just happened. My mother overworked herself. Due to years of continuously pushing herself, not having proper sleeping hours, irregular eating, and overall stress, she developed a serious heart condition. She eventually woke up and managed to put herself back on her feet, but it was already too late. The damage done to her heart was already done, and there wasn't any going back. It was all matter of time before her heart stopped functioning completely. The doctors put her on a waiting list. Her only chance was to receive a heart transplant. It was here that things truly got difficult. My mother wasn't allowed to work. Otherwise she risked getting another heart attack. So we were faced with a problem at that moment. How were we live without a stable income? I felt angry at myself. If only I would have noticed earlier, perhaps things wouldn't have ended like this. Perhaps my mother didn't have to go through that painful ordeal. I took matters into my own hands and decided to take care of my mother. She was against it, of course, saying that I should focus on school and my life, saying that a child shouldn't start working and taking care of the parent. I put my foot down and told my mother that I want to help her. After a lot, and I mean a lot of convincing, my mother finally agreed. Clearly controlled by my emotions, I was blind to how difficult the real world truly was. I did manage to find a job as waitress, but it certainly wasn't easy. The job itself was well paid, but it was very tiring, and trying to manage it together with my school life was challenging. I used to go straight to work after school was over. After my shift was done and I got home, I would fight my fatigue and start learning and writing my homework for the next day. I somehow managed to have a somewhat stable income. My salary, combined with my tips and my scholarship, somehow was able to cover our expenses. While I did manage to get used to this new lifestyle, there was something I was missing out. My own personal life. There were many times when my classmates would invite me to hang out after classes, get to know me better and all, but I just didn't had the time. I didn't tell anyone about my situation, so they didn't knew my reason, so they could only make assumptions to why I was behaving that way. Their conclusions weren't very nice. People can be really fast to judge things that they don't understand. They would say that I am some kind of smug girl that thought she was too good to hang out with the others, and that was one of the more nice rumors. It hurt. It hurt so bad to be judged that way, not knowing the story behind a person's reason and actions. But the thought that I might lose my mother if I stopped hurt way more, so I swallowed the bitter pill and endured it. There were times when exhaustion would hit me like a hammer, falling asleep during classes, getting scolded by the teachers because of it. I recall that one time I actually fell asleep while resting against a window in the school halls. I could have fallen down from it and seriously injured myself, if it weren't for someone waking me up. "Are you okay?" was what she asked me as she arranged her glasses. Even though I was still half asleep, I instantly recognized who it was and froze in fear because of it. "And no, I'm fine, Shidori-senpai. Just a little tired." I desperately waved my hands, hoping that this situation won't get me a detention. She, however, didn't reply at first, and instead looked at me from head to toe. A tired sigh escaped her lips. "While the bags under your eyes and the shade of your skin is telling me otherwise, I will leave it at that." I stood in place as I watched her turn around and walk away, but not before she gave me one last piece of advice. "In all seriousness though, please try to take care of yourself, otherwise it might get out of hand one day." As one could imagine, I didn't listen to her advice. And it came back to bite me a few months later when I collapses in the classroom. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, my mother next to my bed with the most pained expression I ever saw from her. It turns out that the complication my mother suffered from wasn't simply from accumulated factors, there were also hereditary factors involved. I was by no means in the same state my mother was, but if I kept living the way I did, chances were I would end just like her. There were many weird and difficult medical terms that the doctors used when they explained this to me, but from what I understood, because I was still growing and my body wasn't fully developed, it was affecting me faster than a normal adult. I felt beyond frustrated. What were we gonna do now that the doctors told me that I can't work anymore? When I was discharged and returned to school, I was called to the student council room. I assumed it concerned me passing out in my classroom. "It seems you didn't listen to my advice." That was the first thing she told me as I took a seat in front of her. For the following minutes, Shidori-senpai would read reports about what happened that day, about the results of my medical records, but also records concerning my mother. When she finished, she had just one question. "What do you plan of doing now?" I just sat in silence. I truly didn't have any clue about what I could do in this situation. She seemed to notice my behavior and began reading from another file. "The reports state that even if your mother did receive a heart transplant, she will need a long period of treatment and medication afterwards in order for her to make a proper recovery and live a normal life, which, judging by your income, isn't something you can afford." Her words made me feel even grimmer. I already knew that, but I tried to stay positive, believing that I will manage somehow. Or at least that was before I was told I can't work anymore. "These are serious matters, Kusaka-san. While I do admire your love and dedication to your mother, you must realize that this situation is also ruining your life." "I don't why," but I snapped at her. "Do you think I don't know?" Perhaps it was all the build-up stress, but I kept on screaming at her. "Do you think I enjoy this? I can't even remember how it feels to just go out with friends and have fun without having to worry about the next day." I buried my hands in my face, trying to hide my tears from the world. "Is it really so wrong to sacrifice some of your happiness for the sake of someone you love? I know it's wrong. I know it hurts me, but I don't want to lose my mother. Not like this, not when I could have done something to save her." My voice already began cracking, the salty tears flowing between the openings of my fingers. The only sounds in the room were my sobs. The girl in front of me was silent as she stared at my trembling form. After about a minute of pondering, she finally decided to speak. "What if I told you there was a way to save both yourself and your mother?" Was all I managed to ask between sobs. She then told me everything. About devils, peerages, and her offer. She had a lot of connections and she could arrange for my mother to get the transplant immediately. Not only that, but she would also give me a monthly payment that covers our expenses and would allow us to live a proper life without us worrying about working. It seemed just too good to be true. My problems would be solved and I could actually start to live my own life, make friends, and memories from my high school years. Again, it seemed way too good to be true. Why help me of all people? I didn't realize it, or why the hell was I even saying this since it could ruin everything, but I asked anyway. There are certainly people more in need than me in this world, with situations much difficult than mine, and yet why would you help me? She narrowed her eyes at my question. Her sharp gaze really used to scare me at that time. "Don't misunderstand me, Kusaka-san. I don't go out of my way and help those in need out of the goodness of my heart. I'm not a humanitarian," she explained to me in all professional manner, feeling like I was doing an interview with the big boss of a company. "Your dedication is what impressed me. It's hard to find someone with even a fifth of the one that you displayed, and I find it outrageous to leave someone with so much potential go by. The choice is yours, Kusaka Raya." Instead of thinking what the correct answer, the morale one is, think about what you yourself truly want. Her words made me more confused than I was before. What I wanted for myself. I asked her to give me some time to think about things over, before I gave her a final answer. In the end, I accepted her offer and became her first bishop. I took a moment and processed everything. So that's what she mean by she did it for money. I'm not sure what to think about this. I grew up with a rather good financial situation, so I can't really empathize with her choice. Yet if I were in her place, I would have probably done the same. If by some unfortunate situation I ended in a similar position like Kusaka's mother was, and there was something I could have done to save her, I would have done whatever was in my power to save her. Even if it meant selling my soul. Sacrificing oneself for the happiness of another. It sounded so familiar. Raya/Raya-chan/Kusaka-senpai. My trail of thought was cut off when Hanakai, Meguri, and Nimura all tackled the braided bishop, all of them crashing comically on the floor in the process. That was one of biggest tear-jerkers I ever heard. Meguri sobbed as she stared in her eyes. "To think that you suffered so much for the sake of your mother." Nimura muffled from Kusaka's chest, which she was currently snuggling her face in. "I am supposed to be your best friend and yet I didn't know how much you went through. I'm so sorry, Raya." Hanakai cried as she rubbed her face against her fellow bishops. Kusaka for one appeared rather taken back by the sudden rush of affection from comrades, but nevertheless she smiled and offered all of them a warm hug. Now that I think about it, Kusaka and I have been classmates since our freshman year, and she didn't interact with the other classmates during the first year, always appearing sleepy and tired. That one time she passed out was a big gossip when it happened. We weren't anything besides simple classmates, but I was concerned for her when she fainted in our class. I didn't know the reason behind it at the time. Guess everything makes sense now, girls. I began, my mouth in a perfect straight line, finger pointing to Kusaka. I don't think she can breathe like that. After hearing that, all of the hugging team looked at her and noticed how blue her face was. The very next second they were back at their seats, Yura chuckling at their antics. All of that aside, I'm surprised, Raya, you always are the calm girl that reads book in her free time. I never thought that you went through all of that. Believe me, it's fine, really. It's all in the past now. She smiled gently at us. I know that my mother wouldn't approve of what I did, selling my soul for her sake, but it was all worth it. It's like she was the one who got reincarnated, not me. Seeing her all healthy and bright makes all the pain of becoming a devil may cause me in the future all worth it. Seeing her smile like that, it shows that she doesn't regret a thing. Even if her choice may seem wrong to other people, as long as she's content with it, then I have nothing else to say. Well, I'm next. I glanced at Hanakai. The white-haired bishop had her arms crossed as she looked at us. Now then, the reason I joined was because I wanted to be seen for who I was. The main reason why I chose to become a devil was also due to family issues, but not because they mistreated me like Tomo's case or went through difficult times like in Raya's case. It was because my family was overprotective. I was born and raised in the Hanakai family, one of the strongest Yakuza groups in Japan. My father was the current head of group, which basically made the little princess of the organization, so to say. Growing up surrounded by Yakuza men wasn't exactly as crazy or dangerous as one would expect. As the daughter of the boss, the men wouldn't dare lay a finger on me or intentionally put me in any form of danger. In fact, the members were pretty decent men, many of them acting like older brothers and uncles to me. Heck, there were times I thought we were just one really big and weird family. However, there were some drawbacks due to my position. My father, as much as love him, he unfortunately is a hard-headed person, and once he decides about something it's almost impossible to make him change his mind. This is why when he decided that I needed protection, things started to turn bad. Going to school and back home, I would always have a group of men waiting for me to escort me. I didn't mind the act itself, but what truly affected me was how people saw me. There are groups of Yakuza that partake in many shady businesses, I won't deny that, but the group led by my father wasn't one of them. However, people are quick to judge before they do any research, so everyone that knew me was aware that I was involved with a Yakuza group would avoid me like plague. The fact that most of the men in the group are covered in scars, large tattoos, and have overall scary faces didn't help. I felt lonely. The feeling of people being afraid of you over something you can't control. To get labeled before you even got a chance to talk and show them the other side of the story. It was infuriating. I hoped that perhaps things would change when I got into high school, that it would get better now that I started a new phase in life. I was so wrong. It was all the same. People labeling me before even giving me a chance to prove otherwise, eyes filled with unjustified fear. Slowly, it was building up in me, a hatred for my family and the unfair society. Everything really went from bad to worse one day when I was waiting for the men to come and pick me up. As I was waiting by the school gate, a group of boys from a different school passed by and saw me. Not knowing who I was, they started hitting on me. I simply refused and tried to ignore them. They didn't take it too well. When they saw that words didn't work, they decided to try a more physical approach. I tried to get away, but one of the boys had a really strong grip and I couldn't escape. I don't know if it was good or bad luck, but the men just arrived and witnessed everything, and they certainly didn't take it well. It happened so fast that I don't remember much of how it actually happened, but I do remember how at the end of it all of the boys were lying on the ground beaten up to a bloody pulp. What happened that day only justified the beliefs of the people who feared me. Those boys, as much as I hate to admit, were quite the actors. They made it look like it was all my fault, that I sicked my men on them and turned them black and blue. If things were difficult before, things have escalated afterwards. I recall once bumping into a student, the latter dropping his book. When I picked it up and give it back to him, the moment he saw me he panicked and ran, saying that I could keep it. At that time I felt like things were just falling apart. Was it that hard for a little understanding from my family and the people around me? That was what I was thinking when I was called to the student council office. Standing in front of Shidori-senpai was more nerve-wracking that I could have imagined. Don't know what was exactly scary about her. I mean, she is such a petite girl. Maybe it was the glasses. I am waiting was the first thing she told ever since I entered the office. Her voice certainly wasn't anything close to calming or reassuring. F for what? I met her awkwardly. It wasn't enough that things were escalating beyond any control, but now I may even end up suspended from school. I am waiting for your part of the story, she told me as she pulled small pile of papers, which she put in front of me. From these reports it states that you were the one who provoked the boys, and when things didn't go as you intended you made the men working under your father teach them a lesson. And no, that's wrong. I tried to protect myself, yet my half-hearted voice didn't make things easier. She wasn't startled by my sudden snap, and instead pushed the paper on the side and placed her elbows on the desk, resting her chin over her hands. I am listening then. Understand this, Hanakai-san. I'm trying to help you, even though I may as well trust these papers. So please help me out here and let me hear what really happened. I don't know why, but I started biting my lips. Was it because I was mad at this whole situation? Or was it because I was happy that she was willing to listen to me? I tried my best to explain my situation to her, telling her how it actually happened and why my father's men beat them up like that. It felt a bit awkward telling her everything, secretly fearing that she might think I am inventing most of the stuff so that I can make her feel sorry for me and take my side. When I was done she said the last thing that I expected. Very well. I will help you sort things out. For a few moments my mind seemed to crash, wondering if I did heard that right. I thought it was only a joke or she was doing out of her obligation as student council president. Please do, was all I managed to mutter as I looked at the floor of the room, hoping that my bangs can hide my teary eyes. The following week was certainly odd. The boys that were involved in the scandal were called to the student council office for a special talk with Kaiku. When the talk was over, the first they did was go to the police station and drop all charges while admitting that the whole fiasco was their fault. They even went and apologized to the student body for the inconvenience that they caused, all while personally apologizing to me, head touching the ground as they prostrate themselves. To say that I saw speechless was the understatement of the year. You don't seem very happy even though the problem has been solved. Those were Kaiku's words when we met to discuss the end results of the situation. I should have been happy that everything was cleared, that I was no longer in the risk of suspension, but I wasn't. This was only one of my problems, I slowly began and explained to her. Although this misunderstanding has been cleared, it wasn't the same situation for my previous ones. People still avoided me. In fact, this whole situation made things even worse, although I should have been happy. At that time I wasn't, because I knew that my life didn't change too much. I see, was her response as she narrowed her eyes at me. Then tell me, what do you plan on doing in this situation? I didn't answer and just stared at her. I was back to square one, and didn't honestly knew what I should do. I am curious. Her words broke me out of my depressed thinking, an analyzing look present in her eyes. What if I told you I could give you chance to start things over? See, come again, was all I managed to mutter. The next few minutes were spent on her explaining everything to me about devils, evil pieces, and peerages, about the supernatural world itself and how she would like for me to join her as her new bishop. I honestly didn't know what to say until she told me what her so-called start things over plan consisted of. Apparently devils were able to manipulate and erase memories. While she couldn't do it at a large scale such as completely erasing a person's memories, she could do something along the lines of erasing the memories about a person that doesn't hold an important place in one's memories. The fact that I didn't have any friends in fact helped, and she could erase everyone's memories about me, and I could start over things from scratch. Even with this tempting offer, I still wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, what the right answer was. At least that was until she told me those words. Before you make any decisions, let me make something clear, Hanakai-san. I'm not giving you a brand new life, but rather I'm offering you the potential for one. It's up to you how it turns out, what you truly desire for yourself. It could end the same, it could be vastly different. The only ones who decides how you want to live is you. I never been struck by lightning in my life, but the sensation that hit me after I processed her words certainly felt like it. How blind could I have been all these years? The answer was there all along, right in front of me. So simple that it was ridiculous. However, even it was simple, it wasn't something many would call an easy task. There was one thing that I was supposed to do: fight. All this time I've been avoiding my problems, never truly facing them the proper way. The real answer was to fight for the things that I truly desired, not just kinda want them with a half-baked resolution. I had to stay tall and face my problems head on, accepting any pains or risks that came with them, not letting them pass by and hope that time will fix everything. I had to take attitude and fight for what I wanted. In that moment I decided. Yuri, right, I told Shidori-senpai. I finally have an answer, no more running away from my problems. During my last night as a human I stared in the mirror for hours. Perhaps it was stupid to think so, but I wanted to do something to remind me of this choice, to see whenever I feel like going back to my old ways and remind myself to fight on. A small smile formed on my face as an idea came to my mind. A few hours later I stared at my new dyed hair. While I didn't dislike my old black one, I couldn't help but admire my new white hair. Maybe it was a little weird to dye it for something like this, but there are people who cut it short, get tattoos or piercings when they want to mark a life-changing decisions. Small chuckles escaped my lips as I looked at myself. No more looking back and running away, only moving forward, no matter what. Anxiety. That was the base of her reason. Due to how people misunderstood her, due to her family's background, she had to deal with the anxiety of being avoided as if she was dangerous, treated like a threat, making her feel like it was better if she didn't exist. It may sound like a petty reason, but there's no way one who didn't go through similar circumstances can understand her and judge her for her choice. That's why I won't as well. Although, there was something amiss in what you told us. I decided to address the problem. If your father was overprotective, wouldn't he do the same as before even after you became a devil? There was a visible twitch in from her left eye. Well, I might have just implanted a small directive in his head via hypnosis to trust me more and lessen his protection similar to her. Now my left eye twitched. Perhaps it would best if I just stopped there, letting only a tired sigh escape my mouth. I hope you aren't making a habit out of it. Of course not. She slammed her hands on the table in indignation, the cups on it almost falling down. I know my father wants the best for me, but he needed to understand that the way things were, it was only making it bad for. I didn't feel good about doing it, but he needed a jolt in order to understand that I'm not the same little girl that can't take care of herself. The moment I took the decision to be a devil was time I decided to stop running away and fight for what I want. Even if it meant that I have to resume to underhanded ways like this, I could only stare at her. Although she knows that what she did may have been wrong, she isn't doing it recklessly and is accepting the repercussion of her actions. To me it never mattered what people thought about me, so I can't really relate to her. However, Mitsuzuri did once tell me that I should be more careful with the way I help people without any personal interest, telling me that some people may find it weird. A dry cough got my attention, Saji looking intrigued at our bishop. So wait, you dyed your hair white? Pretty much, but you have to admit I look pretty good like this. She nodded with a smile, flipping her hair backwards in a swift motion. Kusaka tilted her head slightly and pressed her finger on her lower lip. I always thought you did because you were a fan of that idol that's been getting really popular recently. What was her name again? Takon Shiju, was it? Meguri's eyes widened as she heard this. Wait. Seriously? The now revealed faux white head seemed to shrink a little from all the stares she was getting from the others, her index fingers playing with each other as her cheeks gained a red shade in them. I may have gotten a little inspiration from her. I decided to stay out of the discussion since I had no clue about who they were talking about. Instead, it seemed that Nimura took my place. Huh. Now that you mention it, you do look a lot like her. Actually, put some purple contact lenses and you can pose as her stage double. Night wouldn't work, Yura commented as she crossed her arms. How come? Kusaka inquired. Yura closed her eyes and was silent for a few seconds. When she opened her eyes, there was nothing but pure unadulterated seriousness present in them. Her boobs are bigger. I was surprised that I didn't fell off my chair from that remark. The others, however, seemed okay and proceeded to stare at our white-haired bishop chest, Meguri nodding seriously as she did. Yep, you're right. It would seem I made the right call to stay out of this discussion, and it was clear that Hanakai didn't enjoy having her chest the subject of this little chat, judging by the shade of red that was present on her face. Can we please move on? Saji for one clicked his tongue in annoyance, resting his chin in the palm of his hand. Damn, just when the girls began talking about boobs, as Hinra-senpai on the other hand threw a sharp stare towards the blonde pawn. No perversions allowed, Saji. Everyone turned to the twin-tailed pawn at the end of the table, Nimura, tilting her head confused to why she was the target of everyone's attention. Right. I'm next. Nimura nodded awkwardly, taking a deep breath in an attempt to relax. I guess I joined because I didn't want to give up on my passion. If we're talking about where everything started, in my case it all began when I was just 7 years old, when my body started feeling like it was sore, my legs and arms hurting slightly, so I didn't really give it too much importance, but that was just the beginning. The disease triggered unexpectedly. My joints started to swollen and turn bright red, and eventually I couldn't walk anymore. My parents took me to the hospital the very moment I told them that I can't walk. The doctors had a rough time discovering the source of my affection. As time passed, things got more and more unbearable for me. Almost all of my joints got stuck, my mobility reducing to a mere 15% of what it normally should have been. Even the slightest move I did would cause me unimaginable pain. After what seemed like an eternity to me, they managed to track down the cause. It was a form of chronic disease that affected all of the joints, but the problem was that it was usually found in elderly people, and it was extremely rare for a child my age to develop it. If left unattended, it will keep attacking my joints until all mobility is lost, and eventually I will become paralyzed without any hope of ever moving again. The worst part was that the disease didn't have a treatment. There wasn't any medicine, treatment, or operation that could cure it, and I will have to live my whole life with it. There were only ways to cope with it, with proper medication and sport. This was only meant to keep it under control. not treat it, so the moment I stopped the disease will begin attacking me again. Calling it difficult was a nice way to put it. I was just a kid and didn't properly understood what was going on, to why my mother began crying when the doctors told her the news. I was given a list of sports to choose from that could help me cope with the disease. I never really saw myself as a sports person, so I chose the one thing that sounded interesting. Ballroom dancing was what I chose. I went through both physical and mental pain as I grew up, daily taking medication and practicing dance to keep my joints in shape. Sometimes regretting that I chose dance, since I wasn't exactly really great at it, and many times it caused me so many frustrations as I couldn't keep learn the same ways the others did, and with joint pain resurfacing at the most unappropriated moments, I just didn't know if I could go on. Eventually years have passed and I somewhat got used to this lifestyle, gaining a sort of balance how to handle my condition. Perhaps it was because I practiced dancing out of necessity rather than a hobby like other kids did. I became more immersed in it, developing proper skills and coordination that others just seemed to be born with. At my dancing coach's suggestion, I entered several dancing competitions, partnering up with different kids from our dancing group, trying different styles of dancing along the way, developing a fondness for the jive dance style, making it my main style. When it came to the competitions, I was never a first place holder, but I did usually end up in the top 5. Perhaps I would have won first place if the pain didn't keep surfacing the worst moment. But it didn't bother me. I wasn't in it for the prize. I thought I was keeping the disease under control, that although the pain kept resurfacing from time to time, I managed to fight it. Yet everything came crushing one day. It was the summer before I started high school. I recall every detail. The burning yet clouded summer day. I was returning home from dance practice like I always did, stopped by a local store to buy an ice cream, strolled a little near the shopping district, took a weird pamphlet from a cosplaying girl that was handing them to everyone, and helped an old lady with directions. The rain began pouring strongly. I didn't have any umbrella, so I tried to run fast back home before I got soaked. That was my mistake. The rain shortly evolved into a storm, the water getting in my eyes as I ran, making me fail to see that the lights at the crosswalk changed. I don't think that I saw it, but I remember the sound of wheels screaming on the road. Everything that came next was darkness and excruciating pain. When I woke up, I was in a hospital. The first thing I noticed was that my legs felt weird. The moment I glanced, I wished I didn't do it. They were both patched up and hanged in slings above the bed. I was sore, scared, confused and hurt by what was going on. While I busy thinking about what happened, a doctor came to check me out together with my parents, who were both panicking. The answers I feared came from the doctor. I was caught in a car accident. The weather hindered the driver from properly stopping the car, and in the end it hit me full front. While the impact wasn't lethal or with any head injuries, it still left a deep trauma on me, perhaps more mental than physical. My legs got critically damaged. Chances were I might never walk again. Even if I were to make a recovery, I could never perform complicated or exhausting movement, meaning I could never dance again. At first it was just a chore, something I had to do regardless if I wanted or not, because I had to do it, if not my health would have deteriorated. There were moments when I hated it, the pain getting the better of me, making me want to just quit and give up trying again. That was what I felt in the beginning, but it all changed. The more I practiced, learning step by step, finding the charm and beauty in dance, it started to grow on me, no longer feeling like a chore for me, slowly becoming something I enjoyed. I fell in love with dancing. And now it was all gone. I didn't talk to the doctor or my parents. I just cried in my palms. The days kept going by and I just sat in my hospital bed, not knowing what I could do anymore, mostly ignoring the doctors and my parents. I barely ate anything. I just didn't have any appetite. Everything was getting grim. The pain in my joints started surfacing from all the days of inactivity I spent in the hospital. I was just so lost. One night I couldn't sleep. I tried reaching for the phone in my bag. Maybe I could call my parents and talk a little. As I searched in my bag, I found a pamphlet with a blue circle on it. My eyes went wide as I recalled what the girl I got it from told me, that if I have strong enough desire, this piece of paper could help me grant it. I laughed, but it was in a trembling voice. Look at me, believing such nonsense. Stuff like that only happened in fiction. Perhaps it was because I was so emotionally broken that I wanted to believe it was real. My tears started flowing once more, dripping on the pamphlet. I didn't care about a treatment for my disease anymore. I just didn't want to give up on my passion. If there were a way to around it, I would do anything. Although my eyes burned from the tears that kept flowing, they went wide open when the pamphlet began glowing in a bright blue light. Not understanding what was going on, I instantly panicked and threw it away. The moment it landed on the ground, the circle on it seemed to grow and manifest on the ground, illuminating the whole room. The light eventually became too bright for my eyes to handle and I had to close them. When I opened them I was very confused, as an unknown girl was now in the room standing where the circle used to be. Her expression was stoic, her purple eyes carefully scanning me, her mouth slightly opened as she saw my legs. "Greetings, I have responded to your summoning." She took a few steps closer, allowing me to get a better look at her face. "My name is Sana Satrai, a devil. If it weren't for the fact that the girl in front of me just appeared out of nowhere and made those bat-like wings erupt out of her back, I would have told her she was crazy." For a moment I was tempted to press the alarm button next to my bed, but something in me stopped me, and instead made me ask the so-called devil something that has been haunting me for the past days. "Is there any chance I can be healed?" She didn't respond at first. She instead took a nearby chair and sat next to my bed. The following hour we talked. I told her about my situation, how it all started and how I ended in my current position. She nodded and was silent for a few moments, pondering on what to say to me. Her eyes seemed to sharpen, as if she tried to stare into my mind. "There might be a way to heal you, not just your legs but also your disease as well." My eye went wide, a sensation of pure euphoria filling my body as I was about to jump out of my bed in excitement. However, I stopped when I saw her raise her hand. "Wait." That single word was enough to calm me down and remember how serious the current discussion was and what the girl in front of me was. I said there might be a way, but I didn't say it comes for free. What you're asking for isn't something simple, it will come at a price. So I ask of you, what are you willing to do in order make it happen? The air around her seemed to chill from the serious look she was giving me. This was it. A part of me was scared, yet another wasn't. Perhaps I was reckless, perhaps I was being completely foolish, but I knew what I wanted, and I wasn't going to let my sole chance escape. "Anything." I muttered in a tired yet resolute tone that made the girl in front of raise an eyebrow in curiosity. "I will do whatever you ask. Just make it so I don't have to give up on the one thing that I love." There was a hint of surprise present on her face, her eyes softening as she watched my broken form. She let out a gentle sigh and waved her to the side, a small glowing circle appearing in the air. From it a set of chess pieces appeared and landed in front of us. "Allow me to tell you